And we have this breaking news. With about 42 minutes to go before President Biden's 4 p.m. meeting with the Secretary of Defense to discuss the situation in Ukraine, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki has just confirmed moments ago new sanctions on Russia's Bitcoin currency mining industry, including miner Bit River. The U.S. is expected to announce in the next few days another $800 million in aid to Ukraine. But today, Russia really sent shivers down world leaders' spines, releasing this video on your screen of a test launch that Russian officials claim is a missile that has nuclear capability. Now, at this hour, Russia continues its offensive on eastern Ukraine, closing in on controlling the Luhansk region. Forces also continue bombarding that port city of Mariupol. That's where the commander of the last remaining Ukrainian troops posted this video on Facebook, warning his troops are facing their last days, if not hours, and is now pleading with world leaders to help them escape. He's asking for some kind of help in an extraction. Russia's nuclear threats on top of its bloody invasion, no surprise here, have Finland and Sweden considering an unprecedented move. Both are now exploring joining NATO, with Finland's parliament holding a session today to debate seeking membership in the defensive military alliance. Ivo Daalder is the former U.S. ambassador to NATO, now president of the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. Ambassador, Russia's aggression now pushing Sweden and Finland to consider membership, something we know would enrage Vladimir Putin. Do you think either country will formally request membership?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of weeks, really, before that's going to happen. As you said, there's a debate today in the Finnish parliament. The Swedish parliament is a little behind in its consideration of this. Sweden has always been slightly more reluctant to consider this step, but they've made very clear if Finland joins, they will have to as well, and they will want to as well. So I think within a matter of weeks, they will indicate that they would welcome an invitation from NATO, and I expect that invitation to come by the June 29 summit in Madrid that the NATO leaders will convene.
Okay, that's obviously a matter of weeks here. We do know, because Vladimir Putin has been very clear about that if they were, Finland and or Sweden, were to make such a move, he would then in turn make moves. And this comes on a day where he actually tested a missile that has nuclear capabilities. You know, Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine this weekend told CNN that the world should begin to prepare for a nuclear attack by Russia. So my question is, what does that look like from NATO's standpoint?
Well, clearly, nothing is beyond the pale for Vladimir Putin, as we have seen, and I think he has been rattling the nuclear cage now for quite a while. The reality is that he may decide to do this, and I think we have to be prepared for it, but it doesn't gain him much in terms of a military advantage. If there's one thing that is likely to get NATO involved in the war in Ukraine, it's if Vladimir Putin, uses a nuclear weapon. It so fundamentally changes the nature of the conflict and the threat that he poses to global security. For the first time since August 9, 1945 in Nagasaki, to use a nuclear weapon in a conflict would be earth-changing. And the world, and I think even the Chinese government, would come out and said that this is completely unacceptable, and NATO would have to intervene, which makes it presumably less likely that he will do this. He's threatening. He has not done anything. The CIA director said the other day that there is no evidence that they are preparing to use nuclear weapons, evidence that presumably we would be able to detect, given how closely we have watched nuclear weapons capability.
Except that they saber rattled today with that test, and it may just be that, you know, drum beats versus an actual march. But how, back to my original question, how does NATO prepare for a nuclear attack? I mean, beyond traditional armaments?
Well, I mean, how you prepare for it is, it depends a little bit on where it would happen. If Vladimir Putin were to attack NATO territory, there would be an immediate, overwhelming response, most likely conventional, by the way, not nuclear, at least in the very initial stages, because there's no real need to respond with nuclear weapons to have a devastating capability against Russia, either by helping the Ukrainians win in Ukraine or perhaps even directly against Russia. Should he use a nuclear weapon, say, in somewhere in eastern Ukraine, we would and continue to send as many capabilities to protect the population and the military against this. And again, as I indicated, I think if that were to happen, I see the United States and NATO getting involved militarily. So he has to weigh the risk, not just of what a nuclear weapon does in terms of the damage it can cause, but also the consequences it could enlist by the United States and NATO getting involved in a war that he's already at the moment losing.
We have provided, I'm talking about the United States, about $2.6 billion in security assistance. Of course, the $800 million that President Biden is expected to officially announce. And it's a lot of money, certainly. And yet we're hearing from Jen Psaki, OK, we are now sanctioning cryptocurrency companies and miners out of Russia. We know Russia hates crypto anyway. It's not really affecting the crypto prices right now. I mean, Bitcoin's barely down. Have we run out of sanction options at this point?
I mean, the biggest sanction that's still on the table is the one that, frankly, we don't control. It's the importation of oil and particularly natural gas into Europe, which is still funding a good part of the Russian economy and ultimately the ability of Russia to continue to wage that war. We're working very closely with the Europeans on, in the first step now, an oil embargo. The European Union has been drawing up plans for instituting such an embargo. There's some politics going on. There's an election in France, which is pretty close on Sunday. That the EU has no interest in one way or another intervening, so they're leaving the discussion for sanctions till after that. Okay. But those are the big things that can be done. Oil sanctions and gas sanctions. It takes time to wean an economy off of gas or oil, or to find alternative resources, particularly of natural gas, much of which is transported for pipelines that can't be overnight changed. So. The effort is there, and that's where, in the long term, the Russian economy will be truly hurt if the Europe can wean itself off of Russian fossil fuels, which they've said they will want to do.
Speed up that process. Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.